Now, 2 days past her 20th birthday, Alyssa Bustamante is still recognizable as the teenager arrested in the fall of 2009 for the murder of 9-year-old neighbor Elizabeth Olton.
9-year-old James Bulger was snatched from his mum inside a Liverpool shopping centre by a pair of 10-year-old boys before he was tortured and beaten to death.
January 28, 1994. In a quiet Missouri suburb, a 15-year-old stands in the bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror, dark makeup smeared around her eyes, deciding whether to do the unthinkable. 4 houses away, a little girl finishes her homework and promises her mom she'll be home before dinner. Only one of them will ever come back. Here are 5 of the most evil kids in the world.
Abduction and murder of James Bulger remains unthinkable. How could 10-year-old boys snatch a 2-year-old toddler away from his mother in a busy shopping centre and then savagely torture him to death?
Security camera video of little James Bulger being abducted in a shopping centre near Liverpool is as chilling now as it was in 1993.
February 12, 1993, Liverpool. Just after 3:40 p.m., 2 10-year-old boys, Robert Thompson and John Venables, led a toddler away from the busy New Strand shopping center. That child was James Bulger. This single moment, captured by grainy CCTV footage, would soon become one of the most infamous images in British criminal history. Thompson and Venables weren't strangers to trouble. That day, they were skipping school as they often did, wandering the mall and stealing small items for fun: sweets, batteries, a troll doll, even blue modeling paint. But their day's plan took a sinister turn. They decided to abduct a small child. Shockingly, James Bulger was not their first target. Earlier, they tried to lure away another toddler, only to be stopped by the boy's mother. Minutes later, they would find James. While James's mother, Denise Fergus, paid for meat at the butcher's shop, her son vanished. CCTV caught the moment. Venables holding James's hand, Thompson walking just ahead. They led the toddler on a 2.5-mile walk across Liverpool. Along the way, 38 people saw the trio. Some noticed James's distress and the bump on his forehead from being dropped on his head near the canal. When challenged, the boys claimed James was their younger brother or a lost child they were helping find the police. Tragically, no one intervened. Their journey ended at a deserted railway track in Walton, Liverpool, just across from a police station. There, the true horror unfolded.
They threw stolen blue paint in James's left eye, kicked and beat him with bricks and stones, forced batteries into his mouth, and finally struck him with a 22-pound iron bar, causing 10 skull fractures. They left his body on the tracks, staged to look like an accident, and covered his head with rubble. James's body was discovered 2 days later by children playing near the railway. The brutality was staggering. 42 separate injuries, none clearly the fatal blow, suggesting prolonged torture. The community was devastated. Police quickly analyzed CCTV footage, seeing 2 young boys leading James from the mall. A tip from a concerned woman who recognized Venables led to their arrest. Both boys had blue paint on their clothes, matching the paint found on James. Blood on Thompson's shoe matched the victim. During separate interrogations, they quickly turned on each other. Venables broke first, admitting,
"I did kill him. What about his mom? Will you tell her I'm sorry?"
Thompson, by contrast, remained cold and unemotional throughout, chillingly dubbed the boy who did not cry. Their trial would be unprecedented. The boys were tried as adults, despite being just 11 by the time proceedings began. The court heard 20 hours of videotaped police interviews. Psychiatric experts confirmed that both understood right from wrong, shattering the legal presumption that children under 14 couldn't form criminal intent. The trial judge called their actions unparalleled evil and barbarity. The jury found them both guilty of murder, sentenced to indefinite detention at Her Majesty's pleasure. They became the youngest convicted murderers in Britain's modern history. Their case ignited fierce debate about juvenile justice. Media coverage was relentless. Politicians weighed in. The Sun newspaper collected 280,000 signatures demanding a longer sentence.
Secretary controversially increased their minimum term from 8 to 15 years, only for the House of Lords to later rule that such decisions must be made by judges, not politicians. Both boys began their sentences in secure children's homes. Their progress was closely monitored. Some reports suggest Venables showed genuine remorse, while Thompson remained distant. Psychiatric assessments noted both suffered post-traumatic stress, but responded differently to treatment. In 2001, after serving 8 years, the parole board ruled they no longer posed a threat to public safety. Both were released on life license at age 18, given new identities, and moved to secret locations under strict conditions. They could never contact each other, or the Bulger family could not visit Merseyside, and faced strict curfews and monitoring. But their paths would sharply diverge. Robert Thompson, by all accounts, has lived quietly since release. No known violations, no criminal behavior. John Venables, however, would become a repeat offender.
John Venables, one of the boys who murdered British toddler James Bulger, is back in jail on child porn charges. Authorities had tried to keep his arrest a secret.
In 2010, Venables was recalled to prison for possessing child abuse images and breaching parole by visiting Merseyside. Released again in 2013, he was soon rearrested for similar offenses. In 2018, he was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months for possessing over 1,000 indecent images of children and a pedophile manual. He remains in prison, repeatedly denied parole due to the ongoing risk to children. The Bulger case left permanent scars. It shattered assumptions about childhood innocence. It transformed juvenile justice policy. The age of criminal responsibility remains controversial. The debate over rehabilitation versus punishment for young offenders continues. Today, the court injunction protecting their identities remains in force. Attempts to reveal their new names have resulted in dozens of prosecutions for contempt of court. The Bulger family, especially James's mother, Denise Fergus, continues to campaign for justice and stricter laws regarding child murderers. The legacy of February 12, 1993 endures. The image of 2 boys leading a toddler from a shopping mall remains chilling. The James Bulger case forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about evil, innocence, and the capacity for violence, regardless of age. And as long as Venables continues to pose a threat, justice will remain unfinished. However, these aren't even close to the most evil kids to ever walk the earth.
Tonight, exclusive new images of the Missouri teen accused of killing for the thrill of it.
Monte, who, at the age of 15 in 2009, and simply for the self-admitted thrill of it.
January 28, 1994, St. Martins, Missouri. A troubled 15-year-old named Alyssa Bustamante stares at her reflection in a bathroom mirror, dark makeup smeared around her eyes, contemplating a decision that would shock the nation. Just 4 houses down the street, Elizabeth Olton finishes her homework, dreams of becoming a teacher one day, and promises her mother she'll be home for dinner. Neither could imagine how their lives would violently intersect that evening. From the outside, Alyssa appeared to be a typical teenager. She got A's and B's in school, wrote poems, attended church youth activities, and seemed to thrive in the care of her grandparents after both her parents became unavailable due to addiction and incarceration. But beneath that surface, a much darker reality brewed. Alyssa struggled with depression, frequently cutting herself, and once attempting suicide. Her internet profiles on YouTube and MySpace listed killing people among her hobbies, and she posted videos of herself coaxing her brothers to touch an electrified fence. Alyssa's virtual persona revealed a fascination with death that her family and friends either missed or dismissed as typical teen angst. October 21st, 2009. The quiet evening is shattered when Elizabeth doesn't return home as promised. Her mother, Patty Price, immediately senses something is wrong. By 6 p.m., panic sets in. Local authorities launch a massive search, scouring the woods between the Olten and Bustamante homes. Police trace Elizabeth's cell phone signal to a wooded area near Alyssa's house. The next day, FBI agents question Alyssa and seize her diary. They find a freshly dug hole in the shape of a grave. Alyssa claims she just likes to dig, but investigators aren't convinced. Alyssa's carefully constructed facade begins to crack. As police gather more evidence, they discover another shallow grave behind her house, hastily covered with leaves. Inside lies Elizabeth's body, brutally murdered, strangled, her throat slashed, stabbed 8 times in the chest. The reality is worse than anyone could have imagined. The investigation uncovers a chilling diary entry, painstakingly blotted out in blue ink but recovered by forensic experts. I just fucking killed someone. strangled them and slit their throat and stabbed them. Now they're dead. I don't know how to feel ATM. It was amazing. As soon as you get over the "oh my god, I can't do this" feeling, it's pretty enjoyable. I'm kinda nervous and shaky though right now. Okay, I gotta go to church now, LOL. Alyssa had meticulously planned Elizabeth's murder. She dug 2 graves the week before, unsure which she'd use. On the day of the killing, Alyssa convinced her younger sister to invite Elizabeth over to play. When Elizabeth arrived, Alyssa led her into the woods, leaving her sister behind. What followed was a calculated, brutal attack that ended in a shallow grave behind the Bustamante home. During interrogation, Alyssa admits her motive. She wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone. The confession shocks even the most seasoned investigators. Alyssa reveals that at about 5:30 p.m. on the day of the murder, she saw Elizabeth and knew immediately she was going to kill her. The calculated nature of the crime becomes clear. The case quickly gains national attention. Alyssa is charged as an adult with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. The prosecution paints a damning picture. A deeply troubled teenager who methodically planned and executed a thrill killing. They highlight Alyssa's premeditation, digging graves days in advance, luring her victim, and documenting the murder in her diary. Alyssa's defense points to her troubled childhood, mental health struggles, and antidepressant use. They argue for leniency, citing her age and history of depression. But the evidence is overwhelming. The jury hears about Alyssa's internet posts, her fascination with death, and the cold calculation of her crime. Facing the death penalty, Alyssa accepted a plea deal in January 2012. She pleads guilty to second-degree murder and armed criminal action, avoiding the possibility of life without parole. The judge sentences her to life in prison, plus 30 years, to be served consecutively. She must serve at least 35 years before becoming eligible for parole, meaning she'll be 65 at the earliest possible release. The courtroom drama reaches a climax during Alyssa's sentencing. She stands, shackled, facing Elizabeth's family. Her voice trembling, she says, "I know words can never be enough, and they can never adequately describe how horribly I feel for all of this. If I could give my life to get her back, I would. I'm sorry." Elizabeth's mother, Patty Price, sits motionless, staring straight ahead. Earlier, she'd called Alyssa an evil monster and declared she hated everything about her. The pain of losing her daughter is evident on her face. In 2015, Price files a wrongful death lawsuit against Pathways Behavioral Healthcare, arguing they should have recognized Alyssa's violent tendencies during treatment. The case is dismissed, but Price continues her fight for justice. In 2017, she settled a lawsuit against Alyssa for $5 million plus 9% annual interest, a symbolic victory she'll likely never collect, but one that ensures Alyssa can't profit from her crime. The case has a lasting legal impact. In 2021, Missouri passes Senate Bill 26, closing a loophole that would have allowed Alyssa a parole hearing after 15 years. The law ensures juveniles convicted of second-degree murder serve their full sentences before becoming eligible for release. In July 2024, Alyssa is denied parole at her first hearing. Her next chance won't come until 2029, but even then, she faces another 30-year sentence for armed criminal action. Today, Alyssa Bustamante remains incarcerated at Chillicothe Correctional Center in Missouri. She'll be eligible for parole in 2059 when she's 65 years old. Elizabeth Olten's family continues to advocate for victims' rights, determined to ensure Alyssa never walks free again. And while nothing can bring Elizabeth back, her family ensures her memory lives on, keeping vigil over the system that failed their daughter, determined to prevent another senseless loss. But if you think this case was disturbing, wait until you hear about the next twisted tale in our countdown. A story that proves monsters can hide in the most unexpected places, even among the cutest of children.
Last month, 42-year-old Eric Smith was released from prison after being locked up for 28 years.
Smith became nationally known for killing 4-year-old Derek Roby in Steuben County almost 30 years ago.
Eric Smith was 13 when he killed a 4-year-old boy named Derek Roby. Both lived in the Steuben County town of Savona.
August 2, 1993, the quiet village of Savona, New York, was shattered by unthinkable violence. 13-year-old Eric Smith, a red-headed loner bullied for his appearance, encountered Derek Roby walking alone to summer camp. Within 5 minutes, Derek was dead, and a community's innocence vanished forever. Eric Smith's story is one of tragic irony. For years, classmates mocked his protruding ears, thick glasses, and fiery hair. The constant bullying left him isolated, angry, and desperate for control. In his own words, Smith later admitted, "Instead of me being hurt, I was hurting somebody else." That need for power would culminate in an act so brutal, seasoned investigators struggled to comprehend its savagery. The morning began like any other. Derek kissed his mother goodbye, insisting he could walk the single block to summer camp alone. His mother, Doreen, reluctantly agreed, a decision that would haunt her forever. 5 minutes later, Smith spotted Derek and lured him into a nearby wooded area. What followed was a calculated assault, strangulation until unconsciousness, repeated blows to the head with a rock, and sexual abuse using a stick. Smith then poured Derek's own Kool-Aid into his wounds, a twisted final act that would later become a crucial piece of evidence. The crime scene told a story of deliberate cruelty. Investigators found Derek's shoes carefully placed on opposite sides of his body, as if posed, his lunch bag contents, including a smashed banana, provided early clues pointing to a juvenile perpetrator. But Smith's initial behavior fooled many. He even volunteered to help police with the investigation, relishing the attention. As suspicion grew, Smith began asking alarming questions. Family friend Marlene Heskell recalled him inquiring what would happen if it turned out to be a kid. The banana detail proved telling. When Heskell served sundaes to the family, Smith refused the banana, matching the crime scene's odd detail. Within days, Smith confessed to his mother, who immediately notified authorities. The trial revealed a complex picture. Defense psychiatrist Dr. Stephen Herman diagnosed Smith with intermittent explosive disorder, uncontrollable rage episodes. Smith's mother testified about taking anti-seizure medication during pregnancy, claiming it caused developmental delays and low-set ears that fueled his bullying. But the prosecution argued Smith fully understood his actions, noting he lured Derek out of sight before attacking. Throughout the proceedings, Smith showed little emotion. His blank stare and lack of remorse disturbed everyone involved. Prosecutor John Tunney warned, "I don't doubt for a second, never have doubted, that had he not been caught, Eric Smith would have killed again." The jury agreed, convicting Smith of second-degree murder on August 16, 1994, sentenced to 9 years to life, the maximum for juvenile murderers. Smith began his incarceration at Brookwood Secure Center. Over 27 years, he was denied parole 10 times. Each hearing reopened wounds for the Roby family, forcing them to relive their loss. Doreen Roby described the pain of answering, "How many children do you have?" Her answer, "I have one boy here at home, and I have one boy waiting in heaven for me." Smith's time in prison included extensive therapy and counseling. He claimed to have changed, expressing remorse and a desire to help other bullied children. In his own words, "You can label me a monster, a cold-blooded killer, a demon child, Satan incarnate. Doesn't mean that's who I am." Despite these claims, many, including the prosecution, remained unconvinced of his rehabilitation. After 27 years behind bars, Smith was granted parole in October 2021. His release in February 2022 reignited controversy and fear. District Attorney Brooks Baker acknowledged the pain, stating, "It's a tough day for any of us in Steuben County law enforcement." Strict parole conditions followed, constant monitoring, restricted movement, and mandatory check-ins. The Roby family, while devastated, focused on preventing future tragedies. They championed Penny's Law, extending sentences for juvenile killers and lengthening time between parole hearings. Derek's legacy now includes a ball field built on the crime scene, a place where children play in his memory. Eric Smith's case remains a chilling reminder of how bullying and isolation can lead to unimaginable violence. It forced communities to confront uncomfortable questions about juvenile justice, mental health, and the capacity for evil in children. Today, Smith lives in New York under strict supervision, his name forever linked to one of America's most disturbing crimes. But the story doesn't end here. The next case in our twisted chronicle takes us even deeper into the dark psychology of young killers and the terrifying consequences when warning signs go ignored. May 25th, 1968. In the shadowy streets of Scotswood, Newcastle, life changed forever for two families. A boy named Martin Brown was found lifeless in an abandoned house. The discovery itself was tragic, but what shook the community to its core was who eventually confessed to the crime, an 11-year-old girl named Mary Bell. Mary's story is a chilling demonstration of how childhood trauma can create tragedy. Born on May 26, 1957 to a 16-year-old prostitute named Betty, Mary's earliest days were filled with neglect. Betty reportedly told hospital staff,
"Get that thing away from me. I don't want it."
From then on, Mary's life was a cocktail of abandonment, violence, and manipulation. Her mother, often away on business trips, left Mary in the care of an alcoholic criminal named Billy Bell, whom Mary believed was her father. Even as a toddler, Mary suffered bizarre accidents, falling from a first-floor window, being given sleeping pills, and other unexplained injuries. It's believed her mother attempted to end her life multiple times, including selling her to a mentally unstable woman. Each time she was returned home by her older sister. But Betty's cruelty didn't stop there. As a dominatrix, she exposed Mary to sexual abuse from her clients. The little girl began exhibiting disturbing behaviors, bedwetting, violent mood swings, and a compulsion to strangle her playmates. Small children would return home from playing with Mary, sporting bruises around their necks, telling stories of how she played rough. By age 10, Mary was withdrawn, manipulative, and simmering with a darkness that was about to erupt. On May 11, 1968, she played with a boy who later suffered a serious fall from an air raid shelter, a supposed accident. The next day, she attempted to strangle 3 girls. Police interviewed her, but only issued a warning. No one suspected this small, dark-haired girl could be dangerous. But on May 25th, the day before her 11th birthday, Mary's violence escalated. She lured Martin Brown to an abandoned house and strangled him. The initial investigation found no signs of violence or struggle, so Martin's death was ruled an open verdict. But Mary couldn't resist bragging. Along with her 13-year-old friend Norma Bell, whom she has no relation, vandalized a nursery, leaving confessional notes written in crayon, one chillingly stating, "We did murder Martin Brown." The police dismissed them as childish pranks. Mary's brazenness grew. She showed up at Martin's home, coldly asking to see him in his coffin. When the family pointed out he was dead, she replied she knew and wanted to see him in his box. She and Norma continued to harass the grieving family. Then, on July 31st, 1968, the violence returned. Brian Howe was found, strangled, and mutilated in a field. This time, the evidence was clear. The killer was another child. Brian's body bore puncture wounds, sections of hair were cut, and an M was carved into his stomach. Nearby, investigators found broken scissors. Mary's dominance over Norma became apparent. Although Norma was 2 years older, she was developmentally delayed and easily manipulated. When questioned by police, Norma broke, revealing Mary's confession about enjoying strangulation and leading them to the hidden razor blade used to carve the M. During the trial, experts diagnosed Mary with psychopathy, impaired empathy, no remorse, and egotistical traits. Norma, deemed an unwilling participant, was acquitted. Mary was found guilty of manslaughter on grounds of diminished responsibility and sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. Prison brought new horrors. As the only girl in a boys' reform school, Mary suffered sexual abuse from both staff and inmates. Even in incarceration, her mother's exploitation continued. Betty sold Mary's artwork and letters to tabloids for profit. After 12 years, at age 23, Mary was released with a new identity. The state granted her lifelong anonymity, a right extended to protect her daughter and granddaughter. Despite her horrific past, Mary reportedly showed genuine remorse. Acknowledging her abuse didn't excuse her crimes. Her release sparked public outrage. How could someone who committed such acts at 10 live freely? Yet her case highlighted the cycle of abuse and the failure of social systems to protect vulnerable children. Mary Bell's story remains one of the most disturbing chapters in British criminal history. While her victims' families continue to grieve, Mary's whereabouts remain protected. Her story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about child violence, the impact of abuse, and whether true rehabilitation is possible. But if you thought Mary's story was unsettling, what comes next proves that darkness can take root even in the most unlikely places and people. April 23, 2006, Medicine Hat, Alberta. A neighbor's son peers through a basement window and spots the unimaginable: 3 lifeless bodies inside the Richardson family home. The quiet Canadian community's tranquility is shattered forever. What follows is one of the most disturbing crimes in Canadian history, orchestrated by a 12-year-old girl and her 23-year-old boyfriend. Jasmine Richardson seemed like a typical preteen on the surface. Born October 21, 1993, she'd been a straight-A student, active in school fine arts programs, and popular among her friends. But by age 11, something shifted. Jasmine began adopting goth culture, dressing in black, wearing heavy eyeliner, and immersing herself in online subcultures. Her parents, Mark and Deborah, noticed the changes but assumed it was typical teenage rebellion. By 12, Jasmine was frequenting punk shows and goth circles, where she met Jeremy Steinke, a 23-year-old with a troubled past. Jeremy had endured an abusive childhood, dropped out of high school, and created a bizarre persona, claiming to be a 300-year-old werewolf. He wore a vial of blood around his neck and often provided drugs and alcohol to younger goth kids to gain their acceptance. The relationship between Jasmine and Jeremy quickly became inappropriate and intense. Jasmine lied about her age online, presenting herself as 15 on sites like Vampire Freaks and Nexopia. Jeremy's friends and Jasmine's peers expressed disgust at their age gap, but the couple persisted. When Jasmine's parents discovered the relationship, they grounded her and tried to intervene, but this only fueled her rebellion. Their digital footprint paints a disturbing picture. On his Nexopia page, Jeremy wrote, "Their throats I want to slit. They will regret the shit they have done, especially when I see to it that they are gone. They shall pay for their insolence. Finally, there shall be silence. Their blood shall be payment." Jasmine's own messages were equally chilling. She wrote to Jeremy, "So, I have this plan.
It begins with me killing them, and it ends with me living with you."
Despite telling friends about these plans, No one believed her capable of such violence. The couple's inspiration reportedly came from the Oliver Stone film, Natural Born Killers, about a young couple on a murderous rampage. Days before the murders, they watched the film together and discussed mimicking its storyline, except they wouldn't spare Jasmine's younger brother, Tyler Jacob. The night of April 22, 2006, Jasmine left a basement window open. Jeremy, high on drugs and alcohol, entered around 5 a.m. Deborah woke to the noise and confronted him, only to be stabbed 12 times. Mark rushed to help, fighting back with a screwdriver and injuring Jeremy's eye, but was ultimately stabbed 24 times. His last words were, "Why?" Jeremy's chilling response,
"Because it's what your daughter wanted."
Upstairs, Jasmine faced her terrified brother. In her own words, she claimed it would be too cruel to leave him orphaned. Tyler fought valiantly, reportedly using his toy lightsaber, but suffered multiple stab wounds and a slashed throat. Whether Jasmine or Jeremy delivered the fatal blows remains disputed, but both participated in his murder. After the killings, Jasmine cleaned the murder weapon, packed a bag, and withdrew cash from her mother's ATM card. She met Jeremy, and they attended a friend's house party, where they were seen laughing and showing no remorse. Jeremy even displayed his eye injury from Mark's defense efforts with pride. The next day, they fled with friends to Leader, Saskatchewan, about 130 kilometers away. Meanwhile, investigators initially feared Jasmine had been abducted. That changed when they discovered a stick figure drawing in her school locker depicting her family's murder. Digital evidence quickly linked the couple to the crime. They were arrested at a convenience store just one day after the bodies were found. Witnesses later recounted how Jeremy boasted about gutting Jasmine's family like fish, and Jasmine remarked about her brother's death. "My little brother gargled." The trial revealed even more disturbing details. Jasmine maintained she'd only had hypothetical conversations about killing her family, but overwhelming evidence contradicted her claims. Both were found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. Jasmine, protected by Canada's Youth Criminal Justice Act, received the maximum sentence for someone her age, 10 years, including 4 in a psychiatric facility and 4.5 under conditional supervision. She began attending university classes while still under supervision and completed her sentence in 2016. Her record was expunged in 2020. Jeremy, now going by Jackson May, was sentenced to 3 concurrent life sentences with parole eligibility after 25 years. He proposed to Jasmine in jail. She accepted, but their correspondence eventually ceased. He remains incarcerated with little hope of release. The Richardson family murders remain one of Canada's most shocking crimes. Jasmine Richardson, once the youngest person convicted of multiple murders in Canadian history, now lives under a new identity. Whether she's truly rehabilitated or simply mastered the system is a question that haunts those who remember the horrific events of April 2006.